Peace talks between the United States and Iranian officials crumbling overnight. New reaction from President Trump today, and when he says the U.S. blockade on the Strait of Hormuz is set to begin. Plus, it's the end of an era in Hungary. Prime Minister Viktor Orban losing his election after 16 years in power, even after a visit from VP Vance to help bolster his campaign. What this means for America's influence in Europe and here at home. And have you filed your taxes yet? The deadline is this week. How much more you can expect to get back this year than usual. Thank you so much for joining us for NewsNation Live. I'm Nick Smith. We begin this evening with new developments on the war in Iran. President Trump threatening a U.S. blockade of the Strait of Hormuz effective immediately. This after marathon peace talks between American and Iranian leaders ended without a deal. Correspondent Hannah Brandt is live at the White House with the latest. Hannah, good evening.
Hi, Nick. The Trump administration says these talks simply fell apart because Iran is not willing to give up its nuclear ambitions. And President Trump calling nuclear the only point that really matters here. He says that's the priority. Now, this all comes after the U.S. negotiating team, which was led by Vice President J.D. Vance, left Pakistan after 21 hours of talks in which they failed to reach a deal. President Trump responding today by announcing that new blockade. He says it's going to be enforced by the U.S. Navy. And U.S. CENTCOM sending out some details saying it'll take effect starting tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. They say the blockade will be on all vessels coming or going from Iranian ports, but that their forces are not going to be blocking ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz to and from non-Iranian ports. President Trump explaining the reasoning behind this blockade, saying Iran cannot be, quote, allowed to profit off this illegal act of extortion. He's also warning the U.S. military is ready to, quote, finish up Iran. Take a listen to what the president says comes next.
We're not going to let Iran make money on selling oil to people that they like and not people that they don't like or whatever it is. It's going to be all or none, and that's the way it is. And it'll be, you saw what we did with Venezuela. It'll be something very similar to that, but at a higher level.
At the same time, though, President Trump is saying he thinks Iran will come back to the negotiating table, but the two sides do really seem to be at odds with their demands. A U.S. official is telling NewsNation these are the red lines that the U.S. has laid out during these negotiations. They include an end to all uranium enrichment, a removal of already enriched uranium, security framework to ensure peace with regional allies, an end for funding terrorist groups that include Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, and fully reopening the Strait of Hormuz without tolls. Iran did respond to President Trump's new statement. The country's parliament speaker came out and talked to Iranian TV saying, if you fight, we will fight. Nick?
Hannah, question for you, because you know the gas prices and grocery store bill continues to be a thing for Americans. Did President Trump talk about high oil and gas prices in that interview?
He did. And what he said is he's basically dismissing high gas prices as a short-term problem. We've heard him say that before. That's what he said this morning, even as this new blockade raises a lot of concerns because some people are arguing it'll only prolong the oil shortages that we're seeing and further spike global prices. Here's what Congresswoman Julie Johnson told NewsNation about it this morning.
What is the end game there? And actually blockading the strait is only going to exacerbate oil prices. It's only going to make gas prices go up here for the United States and across the world, which is exactly why he's trying to opening the strait. So I think there's other methods besides doing exactly what the Iranians are doing, which is closing the strait down. It makes absolutely no sense.
But the White House is trying to put their economic message back in the spotlight in this upcoming week. President Trump will be traveling to Arizona and Nevada to highlight the new tax policies that we saw Republicans recently put in place. And he's going to be showcasing measures that he and the White House says are giving Americans bigger tax refunds this year. Things like his no tax on tips policy. We've heard him talk about that a lot, Nick.
Hannah Brandt, live at the White House. Hannah, thank you so much. With us now, retired Marine Colonel Mike Jernigan, who served in leadership roles in both Iraq and Afghanistan. Sir, thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, Nick. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Help us here, because President Trump today said the U.S. and possibly other countries will take part in a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. It comes after the UAE Minister of Industry and Advanced Technology CEO said today the Strait of Hormuz has never been Iran's to close or restrict. How concerning could Mr. Trump's goal be with other countries getting involved, and how do you see this playing out in the next few days?
I think this is very interesting. I think the United States is adding economic costs to Iran. What Iran tried to do previously by closing the straits, now they're getting a taste of their own medicine as the U.S. Navy is going to prevent oil and other things that are destined for Iranian wallets. So I think that this is an escalation that is expected. As for your question about what that means with other Gulf states, Iran has been a bully in the region for years. Even as recently as 3 days ago, it fired 6 different ballistic missiles towards Bahrain. So all of the smaller countries around Iran I think they're going to be ready to get some of their payback. And I'm glad to see that they're helping the United States in military operations.
You know, Colonel Jernigan, though, it seems to be either negotiate or escalate.
Those are two sides of the same coin. Wars stop when people decide that they are tired of fighting. Now, that sometimes is the loser and they're incapable of fighting, such as the Japanese and the Germans in World War II. Sometimes that's when one party just quits, like happened to the British and the American Revolution, and our country was born. Or in Vietnam, when America walked away from that and 2 countries were merged. So all of the measures to help a country quit are what is going to be applied.
And Colonel Jernigan, I guess my question to you is, people at home sitting back, there's no question that military might by the United States has defeated Iran. We've heard the president talk about that. But there seems to be a will with the Iranian people to continue to put, or not the Iranian people, excuse me, but with the IRG to continue to put sand in the gears. Do you think that that strategy can be effective for them, and for how long, if at all?
Right. I think the Iranians' best strategy is to delay this out and outlast the Americans' will to win. In 1975, a North Vietnamese general, Vo Nguyen Yap, wrote a book called How We Won the War. And essentially, he just said, we outweighted the Americans. I don't think any of your viewers are looking forward to seeing an Iranian general writing a similar book in the future. And
that waiting out the Americans can also be a pressure point with these gas prices. Right now, $104 a barrel. Some experts are saying the blockade will lead to even higher oil and gas prices. But former Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton said on the Hill Sunday earlier today that he welcomes the blockade. Let's take a listen and chat on the other side.
I certainly welcome Trump's announcement. He's going to put a blockade on Iranian oil, and I think we ought to continue that. I think the goal right now should be to use the military, reopen the Strait of Hormuz, let Gulf Arab oil out, and continue to blockade Iranian oil and see how they feel about that.
And Colonel Jernigan, you and I both know that Mr. Bolton and Mr. Trump have definitely been at odds. He doesn't wax platitudes on the commander-in-chief, but is he right? Do you agree with this assessment?
I agree with the assessment because it's providing costs to the Iranians that are significant. But right now, those costs are not measured in American lives. So as a military man, I am welcome any opportunity to end a war without as much risk to Americans.
Colonel Jernigan, I think you said that the key thing right there, as long as we don't have the loss of American lives, I think the people will stand behind the commander-in-chief. But how long can we wait this out? I've got about a minute left. I do want to ask you, though, I want to shift to Israel. Negotiations between Israel and Lebanon are expected this week in Washington, but it comes as Israel has launched fresh new attacks today. Will both sides be able to resolve this aspect of Israel's broadening of the war in order to get a peace deal?
I think they can, but I think they're going to have to separate it. I think Israel and Lebanon will have to come to their own separate piece. And I think that the Israelis' involvement with the Americans against the Iranians will have to be a separate piece because the Iranians have sworn to eliminate Israel as a country in their constitution. So with Hezbollah and Hamas armed and fighting against Israel, I think those are two separate things. But yes, I am optimistic that a peace deal can be reached.
Colonel Mike Jernigan, thank you so much for spending part of your Sunday evening with us.
Thank you.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio revoking the green cards of 3 Iranian immigrants the Trump administration says are related to an Iranian commander killed in U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran. State Department officials say a man, woman, and their child have been taken into ICE custody and will soon be removed from the country. They were granted entry into the United States in 2014 under the Obama administration. Well, 1 person is dead and 6 more people have been hurt after a shooting at a Chick-fil-A in Union, New Jersey, Saturday night. Police responded to the scene around 8 p.m. Witnesses say several masked individuals entered the restaurant, jumped behind the counter, and opened fire. The victims were transported to a nearby hospital with conditions not yet confirmed. New Jersey Governor Mikey Sherrill says it does not appear to be a random act of violence, but there is no immediate threat to the general public. And have you filed your taxes yet? If not, the clock is ticking. The deadline to file your 2025 return and pay any tax due is Wednesday. And some good news, returns are a little bigger than usual this year. Our own Alicia Nieves is here to break it down.
Yeah, the White House says tax refunds are up 24% this year. And in terms of what is behind the increase, well, it's the White House taking a victory lap here. Officials are pointing to tax changes included in President Donald Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill signed into law last July, along with inflation adjustments that impact how much money is being withheld from each paycheck. According to the IRS data, the average return for 2026 is around $3,521, an 11% increase from last year's $3,107 payment. And while this may sound exciting, the ongoing war with Iran is offsetting these increases. For many Americans, that extra cash is arriving at a critical time to pay for the cost of everyday necessities that continue to rise. Gas prices alone are up 30% compared to this time last year. In April of 2025, the price at the pump for a gallon was $3.21. That sounds great because right now the average gallon of gas costs around $4.13 a gallon, and economists warn a larger refund doesn't necessarily mean you're coming out ahead, because the net effect this year of all Trump's tax policies is a higher tax on most Americans in all income groups aside from the richest 5%. And while the administration is touting these increased refunds, critics note the broader cost, with the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office estimating the One Big Beautiful Bill could add more than $4 trillion to the national debt over the next decade. Back to you.
Alicia Nieves, thank you so much. Northern Irish golfer Rory McIlroy has won back-to-back Masters. McIlroy is only the fourth golfer ever to win back-to-back Masters, the other three being Jack Nicklaus, Nick Faldo, Tiger Woods. In other words, it's been 24 years since the last back-to-back Masters win. Coming back from a brutal round three, he was 12 under for the tournament. The crowd chanted his name as he won his sixth major title. Wow. That is amazing. And Shane Lowry making history at this year's Masters tournament. The Irish golfer became the first player to hit two career hole-in-ones at the Masters. Lowry's hole-in-one was the seventh ace recorded on the sixth hole in Masters history, and the first since Corey Connors made one back in 2021. And right now, a live look at Budapest, Hungary, where Prime Minister Viktor Orban has conceded the election in a, quote, painful result. We'll have the latest after the break.